This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation. Welcome, Heather, and we're talking today about women in executive roles and the journey, the barriers, the challenges, the successes, the trends, all those things, the balance. And I'm excited to dig in. And so let's just start. Heather, if you would just share a little bit about your background and your journey into becoming an executive.
Certainly. Tom, Adrian, so nice to see both of you. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And yeah, I'll start. I originally started in research and development in biology and learned that I enjoyed the business side of consumer packaged goods. So got my MBA, worked in CPG for a while, and then have spent about 20 years doing business and career coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, business owners. And then about a year and a half ago, I was recruited to become a partner at Newport LLC, which is a national C-suite advisory firm. Basically, what we do is help with fractional interim C-suite roles. My partners are incredibly experienced executives, and then also helping advising both CEOs, boards of directors, PE firms, business owners, and helping them through, we'll say, sticky situations and developing growth and scaling. So that's what I do now.
Well, a question that comes to my mind is I remember talking to you about the time you were considering training to sit on a board, and all those years of working with executives or executive wannabes, wherever they are in their career, in coaching and in marketing. What was it that inspired you to say, I think I could contribute to a board?
That's an interesting question. My board journey it really is what I find interesting is other people seeing something in you maybe that you don't see in yourself. So having coached and advised board directors, executives, leaders for so many years, you learn, you pick up some tips, you understand what's going wrong and what's going right. And having spent 20 years advising on how to run a business and how to be successful and scale, a lot of those same skill sets are very useful for a board of directors member. A couple years ago, one of my former clients, who's the CEO of a company, was working with Michelle Ashby, who we both know, and had said, Heather, you've worked with a lot of companies, you have a good business background. Could you take this online course and tell me what you think about it? At the time, Michelle was developing her online course for board governance training. And I took it, and then Michelle reached out to me and said, I think you should be doing this as a job because you did really good. Quite frankly, I really enjoy the work. I love serving on a board. It really is a great combination of both data analytics, financial acumen, um, with that nice balance of humans and understanding how to work with people and getting teams to work well together because you have to get the board to work well with the executive team, to work well with the employees, to work well with the consumers, and really having that oversight and being able to noses in, fingers out, be a good board director is important when it comes to how you guide a business moving forward. Um, so that's how I got to sitting on boards.
With all the female executives and male executives that you've worked with over the years, what unique challenges have you seen women face as they've come into executive roles that maybe their male counterparts haven't had to face?
Honestly, it's the stuff you would expect, imposter syndrome, not applying for a job unless you have 150% of what they're asking. Those basic tenets are what I would say. Beyond that, a lot of it is basic leadership, is being able to understand how to build a team, who are the right people to be on that team. It's hard, and it's a different experience when you're the leader versus maybe the hiring manager or the recruiter. So that's, I think that right now, and maybe it's because there's so many people out of work right now and so much job transition and career transition happening. It's possible that's why this is more in light, is like, are you hiring the right people? Do you have the right people on your team? And that's not it's not a new concept. I mean, you think of like the books like Good to Great that talk about, people first. You really have to build a good team first. So this isn't an unusual or newfangled concept. It really is being a little more aware of who you're bringing on the team. So that's the one area I found for executive women that needs the most focus, we'll say right now.
And let's talk a little bit about the trends. There has been progress of women in executive roles. And when we were talking before, and I said to talk a little bit about, being the only woman in a man's world and that kind of thing. And you said, boy, we'd be having a completely different conversation if it were 15, and then you said even 10 years ago. And so talk a little bit about what you're seeing now in terms of the opportunity and sort of the culture around empowering female executives.
Certainly, certainly. There has been a global awareness that diversity on a board or in the executive suite makes a difference in a positive way. Productivity and profitability have been linked to a higher level of diversity within those leadership teams, whether it's a board or whether it's an executive team. So now that data has come out, there's been a slow response, but a response to that where women are being offered more executive roles, more roles on boards, in order to really latch on to why, what makes a difference? Why does it help to have them there? Diversity of thought, diversity of leadership skills. And that's really where I see it. The shift is still happening. I worry that it's slowing down. So I'm not sure. I'd love to hear from both of you what you think about the shift in the viewpoint of having diversity in leadership. Do you feel it's shifting? Do you feel it's not?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think there is clearly movement, but I think that there's also a tendency to put people who are more like us than different from us because of comfort, not because of racism or sexism or and that's a whole different discussion. I'm not saying that doesn't exist,
Right.
but just when you think about putting together a team, you have to discipline yourself to say that we don't want 8 extroverts who all like playing golf. You see, I didn't bring the gender in there. But that would be fun for me, perhaps, but not. So I think there's progress, but we gotta stay ever vigilant. But I think the main responsibility of leaders is to present opportunity and to give people support who may be a fit so that they have a chance. And I think that starts younger before we're talking about the C-suite. And true to your wonderful book, which we'll put a show note on the show note, is to give employees a chance to map a career path, even if it turns out that career path might not be at this company. And I think companies that do that are going to attract the talent, and they might lose some of it, but they're going to retain the right fits.
There's really something to that, Tom, about we'll say supporting an employee's career throughout their entire life cycle at a company. In like, how are we approaching discussions with them and getting to know them in the hiring process? What does that mean in terms of supporting them in the onboarding, or like we talked the first 90 days? or throughout their career, giving them the opportunity for promotions, having a clarity of what's expected of them so that they know which milestones they need to hit to get to that next level, if that's what they want, or to help them transition to another area of the company if they're interested in sliding across functions to something different and exciting. And then at the same point, at the end of their time with a company, what are we doing to support them on their way out? What our outplacements, services being offered if necessary, our connections being kept. There's something very powerful about knowing that you have an ally who's worked with you for a long time that is at an adjacent or similar or collaborative company. That's wonderful because you've already had the experience of working with them. So if you're getting companies to partner together, how nice it is that a former employee is there, that you can work with them. So it's really thinking about supporting their career throughout the entire life cycle. And I think that's an area I'm seeing more and more discussion brought up among career coaches, among recruiters, among HR.
I think it's interesting too, as I think about, career paths often now are unorthodox or untraditional, right? Where you may come sideways, up, down, it's not necessarily great. You're good at what you're doing, so go be a manager. Maybe you don't want to be a manager, and that's all right. And we've talked plenty of times about that. I think what's also interesting is, as you were talking, I was thinking, there's transitions, but there are also mid-career transitions, especially for women. We start in our 20s, we might have children, men too, right? They're part of it. Let's admit that. But for women, there's more leave required, right? That's just fact. And what can we do to support that part of a woman's career path of, I don't want the quick advancement or the push hard for the next level or the promotion, because this is the time, the chapter of my life where I have young children. And so I just want to coast for a few years. And is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can we feel like that's okay without it adversely affecting our career when children are older or when things ease up and we are ready to more, jump into a more demanding job? What do you think about that?
I would flip the viewpoint just a little bit. It is
Please.
very expensive to find good talent.
Mm.
And if you can stand by that employee through whatever life transition they have, I mean, it could be having children, it could be caring for, being the caretaker for a parent, it could be a health situation, whatever it is, one of those situations come up where they need to take leave, and it's important that they do so, or it's important that they, maybe realign what their goals are for the job at that time.
Yeah.
You can be there for them during that and maintain that high quality, high performing talent. They will be so much more loyal to you. They will stand by you. They'll be more engaged. And then, when they do have that opportunity to be more fully engaged, or they're ready for that ambitious step, you're going to get that from them in spades. I mean, they're going to come back and give so much more back to the organization, back to the mission, back to their fellow employees. That's the value of that. And, with people moving jobs so much now, I think it's something ridiculous, like 12 to 20 different jobs before you turn 40 right now. That changes the perspective on how often you're having to hire. If you can decrease your overall cost and the disruption to your teams by maintaining these high quality, high talented employees, then that decreases risk, decreases cost, and probably decreases time to get work done.
Yeah.
And to do that effectively, though, which comes back to coaching and consulting and training, you need to have the conversations to see what's the fit now. And we need to adjust to different seasons. And the traditional career paths don't even honor that exists.
No, no. And I
Your
like that you
next
talk
step
about
is general
coming back.
manager or whatever that is.
Yeah.
You can't do it because you're going to have a baby. Well, we'll have to find someone else. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, but it really felt that
Yeah.
way in corporate America. And now I think people are, so for example, there was a time when they saw if you had 5 or 6 different jobs, they would say, well, what's wrong with her? Can't she
Mhm.
hold the job? Now that's one of the positives. Nobody thinks like that anymore. They want to hear your story and where you
Right.
are now, and then to see if we can find a way your story and our story can align. But
And that alignment is so key. When you're interviewing for someone, be like really try to get from them what their long-term goals are, what they expect, because you want to make sure that there is room at your organization for that career path that they want and that they're looking to do. And, as a mentor or a leader or a manager, when you're trying to guide the careers of the people on your team, making sure that you keep going back to them because their comfort level with a promotion or taking on more,
Mm-hmm.
say, supervisory roles, that can change drastically in 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep going back to that because you don't know, when they're going to be ready for whatever that next step is.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of goal setting, those traditional performance management cycles where now a lot of companies are better because they're doing quarterly reviews, right? Rather than just annual reviews, which is great. But I still encourage managers to make those goals part of regular conversation in regular one-on-ones, right? Like always have those goals front of mind because life moves fast, right? A la Ferris Bueller. Life moves fast. So we need to be ready. And those goals that you wrote at annual or even reviewed 2 months ago could be different now, right? So always be checking in and always be willing to adjust and to pivot. And the same goes with a career decision, right?
Definitely, definitely.
So kind of along those same lines, let's talk a little bit about work-life balance. And we know that's a tough. You've got children, and it's summer, and you might be feeling the same things that I feel of where are my kids going and what are they doing and how are they not going to be on screens while I get things done. So how do you balance professional responsibilities with personal life?
Yeah. Transportation, food.
That says it all right there.
Um, you know, I guess it's like it's any planning you do. I started thinking about how this was all going to work this summer, months ago,
Yep.
and understanding the limitations, like, okay, logistically, how is everyone going to get where they're going to go? How am I going to be able to have meetings with a house full of people? How is everyone going to get fed? To your point, how do I keep them off of screens and doing something that will help them thrive and grow as a human? And have fun. It's summer. It's summer break. They work so hard all year long at school and they deserve some time off. Um, I think the biggest thing is to give yourself the grace that knowing that you're not going to get it right, it's not going to be perfect. Every or maybe some people, and I haven't met them yet, so maybe you've met them, can make sure that their kids get picked up and dropped off all the time. But things happen, and all of a sudden, there's a parade you didn't know about, so that changes the route you're driving, or 3 deliveries. Make sure that your street, forget it, you're not getting down your street right now. But giving yourself the grace to understand that's going to happen, and summer's a good example of unexpected timing. Work-life balance is um it's tough. I think like any business person, you have to think about your goals. Like, what's the number one priority? What at the end of the day, and yeah, a lot of the parents, both men and women that I've coached over the years, at the end of the day, when you go to bed at night, what are you going to look back on that day and say, I did the best thing? Like this, I prioritize what was most important. And I think if you go back and you think, especially during these times of, like you said, that make work-life balance a little more difficult. That could be holidays, that could be vacation, travel. Nobody really stops working anymore. You just take your computer with you. So understanding how, at the end of every day, what did you want to accomplish that day, and what was the most important thing? That makes it a lot easier, because then you know what to prioritize and you know when to push back. And I think, Tom, you've used the expression make space.
I love that expression, make space for
I
what
know you
matters
do. I
most.
think it's a great example, because you think about your calendar and how many different calendars we all work off of. And the idea being is carving out that time, whether it's, making sure you include time to work out. Well, if you put that in as a meeting, nobody's gonna be able to schedule on top of that. And if you prioritize, healthcare, or prioritize time with family, and think about maybe not bringing your computer on your vacation, what
There,
would that look like?
there's another human challenge, and but this is a question. I don't know if there's a gender dimension to this. Perhaps there is.
Hmm.
I think there used to be, about difficulty saying no, about being,
Hmm.
you're trying to make space for what matters most, and somebody who you respect and admire, so we're not talking about people dumping on you, asks
Mhm.
you to do something, your default is always helping them. And that's a
Mhm.
strength. But to be able to say, I can do it if you give me 2 weeks. If you give me 2 days, I can't. And it's because you've made that space. So that's very easy on the logical continuum to understand. But in human dynamics, it can be so challenging that we say yes to things and that makes us doomed. So then what do we push out? We usually push out things like in the Eisenhower metric that are important but not urgent.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good way of looking at it. What's the triage situation? And I guess it's taking the time to understand, prioritize what is important, even if it's not urgent.
Yeah, but is there a gender dimension? I know humans are humans and
Interesting.
we're wired differently. I think
I don't
they're
know.
used to, go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, it's a boundaries thing, right? And I think
Mhm.
we've talked so much about boundaries. I feel like leaders in general maybe are getting a little bit better at boundaries. Do we still, as women, internalize more? So maybe we're good at vocalizing a boundary, but do we feel worse about it than our male friends? I don't know.
It's interesting. Adrian is one of the best at this ever. And
Hardly.
it's been one of the blessings. I don't mind bragging publicly about it because I can ask her to do anything and not feel like I'm dumping on her. And she very gracefully says, no. And she gives me a reason why. And I love that
Yes, in
because
three
I'm just
weeks.
thinking out loud is all I'm doing. But somebody could
Mhm.
perceive, oh, he's really making me run around in circles. Like, no, I didn't make you to do anything. I just said, could you do it? And she said, no. I love that when you have that kind of a relationship where
I think
you
that's the
can
key. I think that's the
balance
key right there.
together.
It's the
I don't know
relationship.
what she can do or can't do or wants to do or don't know. So my point is that we're back to the same question for leaders is, and I'm glad I said question, it was accidentally because I love the framework of your book. Fun and fulfilling
Thanks.
careers, one question at a time. And so that book is for us to ask ourselves these questions to create a better path. But we've got to be good at asking our people appropriately, obviously,
Mhm.
the questions that will help. Maybe they'd never thought of it or hadn't read your book.
It is changing. I'm one of the fun things about getting to work with a bunch of different clients is I've seen a huge shift in awareness of leaders to not only encourage employees to take time, to put up boundaries, to take care of themselves so that they're able to bring their full selves to work. That is definitely happening. That is real. And that's one step. the next step is whether they're, like you said, whether the employees are actually feeling they're in a safe space to do that.
Yeah.
And really, this is one of the aha things that have really hit me over the last year of working with different clients is the relationship between direct supervisors and who they're supervising. So the employee and their direct supervisor. Because it's one thing for a leader at the top of a company to do that and to specifically have their, this is my thinking time. It's always this time. It's on my calendar. Everybody know. It's one thing to do that and to, say, please, employees, take time for yourselves. Unlimited PTO is the thing now. Paid time off, which is great because it acknowledges that people are much more successful and more productive if they can bring their whole selves to work as opposed to having to deal with something that's weighing on them. So those are starting to be set up from like an HR organized perspective, that leadership down. But where I think it's the most effective is when you get that support at that direct leader, your direct manager, your direct employee that reports to you, when you're having those conversations one-on-one, and when you're open about it, even in team discussions with the people you work on, that like closeness is where it's actually makes a difference. Because you can say it as like, okay, our new HR policy is unlimited PTO. That's great. But if you don't have complete buy-in from your coworkers and from your manager or the people you manage, it's not going to work. So that relationship I'm learning is much more important maybe than these overarching strategies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That really resonates with me. It's the team dynamic, right? Because if there's and like you said, that safe zone of, Brene Brown uses this communication method with, I think, with her husband, and she teaches it, but it's coming to the table and saying, I got 80% today, or I've got 60% today. We need 200 between us. So how do we get there, right? And it's similar with teams where there could be a day where between 9 and 5 you just don't have it because maybe you're running people places, right? Which is what I do a lot during the day. And so can I finish something up at night? Like working hours, can they be more flexible? Can a teammate take something for you? But you don't know that if you can't communicate that, if you can't feel safe communicating, like, I'm not going to get this done because of this personal thing, and that being okay, right? And I think, and that's the real bottom line there is, for yourself personally, you can't feel shame about that or guilt about that, and you can't receive that from your peers or your manager either. And that's tricky. That can be tricky in some cultures.
Yeah, and it really, like, like you said, it goes back to the culture and the team dynamics of the team, the organization, yes, but it's good to have a open organization policy and feel and culture, but it really has to be at the team level as well.
And the team can create a culture, because a culture is just how we behave together. And one of the core behaviors is, how do we communicate when things go well? How do we communicate when things don't go well? And how do we know? I always suggest this, and I don't know what percentage do it. Have one conversation where the only question is, how can we work better together? And they only talk about the issues as examples to support, and not get into solving this problem. How can we work better together? And having predictive index makes it easy to see what some of the common pitfalls might be. But sometimes those don't happen to the two of us. Well, what does happen? And then the question is, what keeps recurring as an upset? Because in business and life, just like you said with kids, something's going to happen and they're not picked up. No matter how smart you are, good you are, experienced you are, you're going to have upsets. But it's the ones that predictably recur where there's gold in how we can work better to do. Every time she says X at the meeting, he does Y, and neither of them like it. and they keep doing it. And everybody else sees it. Oh, she's going to do X, he's going to do Y. And we keep doing it. And that's where we can start to say, how can we create a new dance? That dance is not working. I respect you, you respect me, but let's cut it out and get a new dance.
What advice would you give to younger women coming into, maybe not just coming into the workforce, but maybe a handful of years into the workforce, knowing that they do have a career aspiration into higher level leadership? What advice would you give them on how to reach those goals?
Certainly find a mentor or 5, looking, and, it doesn't have to be the obvious mentor that you would think. Like be open to learning from a lot of different people and relying on them, both inside your industry, outside your industry, inside your organization, outside. So that would be, step 1 is finding people to learn from and having that continuous state of learning. For sure. The second one would be prioritizing networking. It's very easy for people, especially if they find a great job in a large organization and they can see a forward trajectory. It's a big enough organization that no matter what they want to do with their career, there's going to be a place for them to go. It's very easy to think you don't need to network and that's not a necessary part of, managing your career. Be open to it, because it may end up being you meet somebody who won't necessarily help you with your career, but ends up helping you plan your next trip or move to a new area of town or learn a fun new hobby or skill, or ends up being your partner for a side hustle entrepreneur opportunity that comes up in 5 years. So, definitely, I think it comes, both of them, are focused around people and learning from other people and getting to know other people. So that would be one area, I would say focus on who you know and what you can learn from them.
Would your advice be any different? I know some young women who don't necessarily aspire to get into executive levels or even senior leader levels. They're cool doing what they do and being good at it and not having the perceived pressures of those kinds of roles. Would your advice be different for women who aspire to just be experts?
No, because I look at it this way. You have most people, I work with a lot of engineers and scientists and technical,
Yeah, that's a
like
great
knowledgeable
example.
experts. And when you talk about those fields, you tend to talk about someone who's a management track person or a individual contributor. Both incredibly valuable, both very much needed. Recognizing which one you are and which one you want to be and moving in the direction you want to be, and being honest with yourself, and being very self-aware is incredibly important, because at that point, that will help shape who you would look for as a mentor or who you would look to meet networking. An individual contributor does not mean that you get to just do what you're going to do and ignore the rest of the world. Because a lot of times individual contributors are those incredibly valuable subject matter experts or key thought leaders in an industry. And one of the things that makes key thought leaders and subject matter experts so powerful is they know the industry. They know the people who are doing great things. They know where the innovations are coming from. They understand the trends in the business. That's only going to happen if they have a network they can rely on. So just because you're not going into management, and that's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay to be like, I have no desire to manage and supervise. Not everyone's a great supervisor. And so it's all right for someone to say, I'm really good at this one thing or this area, or my expertise would be better used here. Awesome, go for it. But that doesn't let you off the hook for needing to network and needing to meet and learn from and share ideas with other people. It just doesn't.
That was such a powerful answer, because whatever you aspire to do, you're going to need the cooperation of other people. and learning how to do that. And we make the point that there's a different style of networking for people, for introverts, for extroverts. And people think of that word, oh, I got to go to lots of networking events. Not necessarily the case, but we need to ask the questions. Who do we need to know? Who needs to know us? And how can I connect, build rapport? And the quantity is different. It might be one person for one person, and it might be a whole department for another. But there's somebody that you need to know, and they need to know you. And I think that we're just about out of time, but I think that's a real good place to just say that whose cooperation do we need, and how can my value be positioned against what they care about? First, you got to find out what they care about. Most of my value isn't of interest to them. And so we poorly position our value, but there's something of value, and let's discover it.
And the common denominator is human connection, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we empower women to the C-suite, is we encourage their humanness and recognize their value, and also change our paradigm a little bit.
It's not acceptable to claw your way up anymore.
Right.
Pushing
And the
people
paradigm
down to
really
get to the
was
top
like
does
there's
not
this,
work anymore.
But plus it doesn't really even exist anymore.
No.
And so that's exciting, but it's also scary because there's so much more entrepreneurial nature
Mm-hmm.
to working for a company than there was when everything was established. You know, you go here and then you go there. And I see this with the high performing students. They knew how to get into the best colleges. They knew how to get an A. They knew how to get into the good companies. And now they're in the high potential programs, and they're saying, like, where's the syllabus? And it's an open culture, and sometimes really hard because they're not used to it. Pursuits being entrepreneurial. It was always
structured
level, and some people figure it out more quickly than others, but we need to help them to see that this is not a negative, but it is a challenge.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Heather. We're sorry we missed Beth, but we are going to catch up with her later.
It's another opportunity
when
for
she
you. I
finds the
love
time
that.
zone, right? And we'll have another opportunity to connect and to talk about these important topics. So thanks for your time.
And we will make sure to put a link to your book for those that are in career transition. It's just, it just feels like a workshop, feels like a conversation, and there's no way you could go through that book without getting insights in who you are and what you might bring to the world. So we highly recommend it. And we're always grateful for you in our network, Heather.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.